how do you broach the subject of subject to deals to a seller? Because it's obviously probably foreign to most sellers that this is even possible. And, once you start saying, well, I'm going to take over, your mortgage is still going to be in your name, it might, cause people to pause a little bit. So how do you explain it in a way that doesn't scare them initially from even thinking about the topic?
Right. Well, the first thing you need to realize is that when you're talking to people who have problems, they're a lot more open to different solutions than people who don't have a problem. If Joe lists his house for sale because, well, the market's good, he might want to buy another house next year. He's not really certain, but he's going to test it and price it at $50,000 more than what Zillow says it's worth, just to see if somebody's crazy enough to buy it. That guy's probably not going to be open to anything that I say other than a full price cash offer or bank financing offer. But if I'm talking to Tom, who is 30 days from foreclosure, his wife left him 2 months ago, he just really wants out of all of his worries and problems. When I sit down with him and say, Tom, I want to try to help you keep your house, he says, man, I don't want this house. I want out of here. I don't want the burden of this payment anymore. I just want to move on. I'm listening to that and I'm going, okay, this guy's open to just about anything. And I said, well, tell you what, you're behind 15,000 in payments. Your house is worth X. You want to get out of here. What can I do? What do we need to do to make this happen? He says, listen, if I can get moving money and a deposit for my new apartment, I'm good. So I know a couple of grand in his pocket is going to make him happy. I say, so you're telling me if I can write you a check for $2,000, you would be open to letting me catch up your back payments, make the payments on your loan, help improve your credit for a little while, and then I'll sell the house down the road? Absolutely. Okay, where's my contract? Here we go. I didn't mention subject to. I don't use technical terms. I ask him what he needs, and I say yes, 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 if I can. And then that's what I give him.
Yeah, that's so key. And that's the part that I think people, especially newer people, rush into it with all the information they've just learned, and they want to spew that information all over the seller
Right.
instead of listening. Just ask tons of questions. How can you best help that person, as opposed to saying, I've got your solution, I just learned about it and I'm going to tell you what it is here. Just listen to what they need and see if you can provide that. That's great.
Don't give your seller a real estate seminar. They don't care.
Yeah. And so a lot of people will say that this isn't possible because there's a due on sale clause that is in a lot of mortgages. And so they say, well, as soon as this changes hands, the bank's going to call that loan due. Obviously that hasn't been your experience. So can you talk a little bit about that?
The due on sale clause does exist. It's in pretty much every mortgage written after sometime in the early 80s. I'm not sure the exact year. But really the due on sale clause says, and if you read it, it's very specific. The lender may, at their option, decide to call the loan due and payable if any interest in the property is transferred outside of a select guideline, which is the Garn-St. Germain, transferring into a trust for estate planning purposes, inheritance if the owner passes. There are very specific things that allow transfer without a due on sale worry. I've been doing this since 1999, and I've taken hundreds and hundreds of properties subject to. I've never, ever had a loan call due, never had a notice from a lender about a due on sale clause. And I believe there are a couple of key reasons why. Number one, we use a trust to buy every single property. Now that's a discussion for another day. Trust or every investor doesn't know about them or know how to use them. And that's something you do need to be educated on, but we don't take title personally. We don't even take title in the LLC. We take title in a trust. The number one thing you can do to avoid due on sale is make payments on time. Don't do anything to attract the bank's attention to that loan. And then number three is handling insurance properly. And for us, that means when we buy a property from Tom, and Tom owns the house like everybody else in the country does, it's in Tom's name, he's the primary loss payee on insurance. But the minute we get the deed to that property, Tom's homeowner policy is invalid because he's no longer the owner. we become the owner, or our trust and our trustee. So the new insurance policy we get will name our trustee as the primary loss payee. It'll also name our LLC, that's the beneficiary of the trust, our management company if we're using one, our trust, of course. But we also name our seller as an additional insured on the property. That means when the lender gets the new insurance declaration page, even though the primary loss payee name has changed, Tom's name is still on that insurance page. So they go, oh, okay, well, there's Tom's name. He's still involved, no problem. And we use a power of attorney to sign for Tom if there's ever a claim on the insurance. So that's a key thing too, to avoid the due on sale. I think the due on sale is, like I said, you need to know about it. Just like every time you have a hamburger, you know that your cholesterol is probably going up, your chances of a heart attack are going up, but you have the hamburger anyway, and you go, well, you know, chances are it'll be okay. And that's the way the due on sale clause is for us. We know it's there. There's a chance it could happen, but it's probably not going to.
Right. Yeah. And I would imagine after doing this many times, like there's, you know, you've got backups built in. Like if one due on sale clause came to fruition and they needed you to refinance that property, you know, you could probably do that at this point. It's not like it happens every single time. So that's a great point. And that's interesting about the insurance, because I've had that same question come up then, because a lot of the insurance is kept in escrow, you know, with the lender. And so they're looking at that policy. It's paid, you know, to the lender monthly. And so so yeah, that's interesting to name them and then get a power of attorney signed at closing saying that, you know, if there is a claim, you can sign on his behalf. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, when you think about it, the only thing the lender will get, I mean, they don't get a copy of the deed. The deed gets filed at the courthouse. You get the original. The only thing the lender will get that would tip them off that anything has happened is a new insurance declaration page. And that has to be sent to them. So, you know, and I've had some students in the past that were so afraid of the due on sale clause, they wouldn't even bother with changing insurance. They would go buy a separate policy that never even got sent to them. And that's a waste of money. It's not necessary, but if you're that scared of it, you can always do it and pay double insurance.
Yeah. It's not, I suppose it's not that much, you know, if you're getting a good deal. So, and so if a seller then is, you know, they're obviously very motivated to sell at this time, but then say 3 years later, they're in a different situation. Now they want to get a new loan for a new property and they have this existing financing that's out there. Do they ever come back to you then and try to get you to pay off that loan later? Or how do you, are you in like a long-term relationship with this seller, or is it, you know, you're done once you purchase the property?
Well, this can happen, and there are a couple of things you can do to ensure that this won't be a problem later. One, and that's why I say disclosures. We have our sellers sign multiple disclosures saying the same thing basically, but worded a lot of different ways so they understand. We don't make promises on how soon this loan is going to be paid off. You know, we say this may take a few years. It may go the full amortization of the loan. We can't guarantee you. There are market circumstances. The market may tank, and you know, this house is worth 300 today. It might be worth 200 next year. So can we refinance it? Probably not. If we owe 300, it's not going to work. So work with us on that. So that we make sure that they're very clear in their understanding that this could be a long-term thing. Number two is just that the sellers have to understand, most likely if they went out to buy a new house next year, they would get a 75% credit debt to income for us buying the property, just as if they had rented it out. Okay. They'll get that 75% credit. Now, some lenders, I understand, after a year will give a full 100% credit, but that's not guaranteed either. It'll depend on the lender. So we make sure they understand those numbers and that they're okay to proceed with it. Occasionally, you will have somebody come back a few years down the road, because you know how it works. You help somebody out today, you're great. A few years from now, when the pressure's off, they change their mind, but that's very rare if you're very clear and set their expectations up front.